Hey, I'm just going to make a quick pitch again for you while it's a rainy weekend to go over to my page and have a look at the GoFundMe campaign. I need a lawyer. But I wanted to make some statements. A statement congratulating the New South Wales Minister for Women, Jodie Harrison, on her remarks today about the disgraceful, you can't believe this is 2023 in Australia. But you kind of can, because the principal of St Andrew's Cathedral School, when my daughter was there, and he's now the principal over at Shaw, and his name's John Collier. And of course, St Andrew's Cathedral School is a Christian school. And just to detour for a moment, frighteningly enough, with all the great intentions in the world, Lily James's grandmother had a statement released into the media this week saying that she guesses her child was just her granddaughter was just one of those children and people who were so delightful, those personalities that were so delightful, that their fate was just to come and do good in the world and go, like some beatific angel. Well, of course, nothing could be further from the truth. She was violently bludgeoned to death with a hammer by Paul Thyssen, Thijssen. She was 21, he was 24. And so this idiot, this Christian idiot, stupid enough to uphold the lie and perpetrate it on young minds that there's a little man with a penis living in the clouds controlling the whole shit show down here on the planet called God. As if God wouldn't have breasts. Imagine being so stupid that you're an adult in this day and age thinking that God has genitalia. And so we'll just do a straight read from the Sydney Morning Herald today, and we're from 2 o'clock this afternoon, and so we're in November on the 4th, Saturday the 4th of November. It says the New South Wales Women's Minister says a principal of a Sydney private school should reflect on his words. That's putting it nicely, putting it mildly, isn't it? After he described a sports assistant, this is Thyssen, who murdered his female colleague, that's Lily James, as an absolute delight and not a monster. The comments came as Prime Minister Anthony Albanese called for men to speak out against the scourge of domestic violence across the country after 5 women were allegedly killed by men in the past fortnight. Actually, I believe that one of the murderers was a woman, and she murdered another woman on a drug-induced psychosis episode up at Muswellbrook, I think. I might have that wrong. It has been less than 2 weeks since the shocking death of 21-year-old St Andrew's Cathedral School sports assistant Lily James. James was found dead after being followed into a gym bathroom, and this was a staff gym bathroom, by Paul Thyssen, a fellow sports coach with whom she had recently broken off a short relationship. And as I was saying the other day in my extended rage, against this machine of misogyny, who the fuck do these people think they are? These men think they are, that their cocks and their penises matter so much that they can murder another person when their ear hears something that their cock doesn't like, and then they go and murder themselves. Although, as I mentioned, if you were like the person who was my mum's stepbrother, you do a half-assed job of it, and you're still alive afterwards. And then you have the hired, when you're in jail, to try to mount an appeal saying that you were suffering extreme provocation because someone else's penis was in your wife. In a school newsletter sent to parents on Friday, John Collier, the head of All Boys School Shaw in the city's north, really deeply important, he's gone from running a Christian school to a boys' school, said Thyssen was not a monster. A young man who beats a woman in the head to death with a hammer. Not a monster. I don't know. Who is then? What, you got to be Hitler and knock off 6 million Jews and autistic people and... What's a monster? In a school newsletter sent to parents on Friday, John Collier, the head of All Boys School Shaw in the city's north, said Thyssen was not a monster in a missive that reflected on looking into the face of savagery. Collier was headmaster of St Andrew's Cathedral School from 2010 to 2021, during which time Thyssen attended the school as a student. So, if he's his remarks, first reported by the ABC, included that the young man concerned was, in everybody's estimation, an absolute delight. I knew him years ago as a fine student, a role model. Collier wrote, "This is what makes the situation chilling, in that on every indicator he appeared to be just like the best of us." So someone's just dropped in here. I don't know who that is, but you're in a group of one right now. This is, just to recap for you, principal of an all-boys school called Shaw, a very elite all-boys school in North Sydney called Shaw, and he used to be the principal of St Andrew's Cathedral School at the time where the young man who murdered Lily James last week, who's the young woman, they were co-workers. She was the water polo coach and he was a hockey coach, but he'd been a student at St Andrew's Cathedral School first, and they had a very brief relationship. She'd terminated it. He murdered her in the staff room of the staff toilets inside in the high security doors of one of the most elite private schools in Sydney. So then he goes on, reflecting on the inexplicable, incomprehensible, unimaginable, extreme violence. Collier wrote that 2 young lives had been destroyed in their prime. Well, one person got the choice for both of them in that, right? And the woman did not. So Collier goes on to defend the murderer here by saying he was not a monster. Rather, in the last 5 hours of his life, he committed a monstrous act, which was in complete contradiction to what everyone who knew him observed in the rest of his short life. He wrote, raising the impact of sexual violence in porn on young men, and remarking that the community will never know if this was a factor in Thyssen's behaviour. You always got to ask, don't you, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Like if you go with Noah Yuval Harari's idea in his book Sapiens, the international #1 New York Times bestseller that's still, in an airport terminal near you, and then you go with the idea that it was only 9,000 years ago, roughly, he posits, that all the female gods disappeared, the goddesses disappeared, and we had sort of mass spread of patriarchal religion in which men dominate like they do in every other sphere of public life now in most places still on the planet, and only just barely changing in Australia now. So what's great about this is that the New South Wales Minister for Women and the Prevention of Domestic Violence, Jodie Harrison, has come straight out again today and said there was absolutely no excuse for domestic violence. And of course, again, like I said the other day, I'm going to end up repeating myself quite a lot in these if I keep going. It is just a cute little euphemism for male violence. Why, a turd by any other name it's male violence. It's very, very, very rarely female violence. And of course, SBS News had, last month on a statistic, 2 months ago, I think it was, a statistic saying 97% of all rapes murders and wars acts are committed on the planet by men. Globally, 97% for a 49% population. So she's come out and says there's no excuse for this domestic violence, which needed to be absolutely condemned by community leaders. And she says, I think the principal, John Collier, should reflect on his words and consider the message they send, not just to the kids at the school, but the wider community, Harrison told reporters on Saturday, and that's today. A Shaw spokesperson said, so Shaw's the school that he's gone to, the elite boys' school that he's gone to in North Sydney, this Christian male leader. The Shaw spokesperson said the content of the newsletter would not be changed or retracted, noting that, as has always been the case, Collier's deepest condolences went to James and those who knew her, Lily James. It was never our intention to create any additional stress for those affected by this tragedy, the spokesperson said. The opinions expressed in this weekly article are deeply personal and reflect the thoughts of the headmaster, of a headmaster who knew the alleged perpetrator. The alleged perpetrator, well, they know it's him. Her bag and his stuff, he's gone missing, his body's been found. It's not the alleged perpetrator. I mean, it's still like they're trying to apologise for him. And reflect the thoughts of a headmaster who knew the alleged perpetrator and who, like many things, is struggling to make sense of the seemingly senseless. And it is senseless, isn't it? Except it made all the sense in the world to him because he controlled her. He wanted to control her, and he did control her in the end by killing her, just like my godfather did when his wife's last words were, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. I'll go and live with my sister. I'll go and live with my father. I'd rather be dead than live with you. So he put a pillow over her as she kicked him off and suffocated her to death on the conjugal bed as she kicked and fought for her life. The spokesperson said the newsletter was attempting to consider... The spokesperson said the newsletter was attempting to consider what responses might be appropriate in a school that seeks to build good men, and how character development programs need to dig deeply into what respect for women fully means. Oh, well, you'd think it'd start by not thinking you had the right or even thought to murder them just because you didn't get what you wanted in your heart, mind, and your dick, right? I mean, women don't get what they want all around the world every day. I mean, people don't, but particularly women don't get what they want. They get pregnant at 12, 13, 14, 15 and 16 years old for all of human history. Grandparents at 33, if their 16-year-old daughter has a daughter at 16, they're a grandparent at 33, and then if they're still reproductive up until they're 43, that means that they often could have a child 10 years younger than their own grandchild. And that would have been the norm for most of human history. And I had to work that out from doing basic maths as an adult because nobody bothered to teach me that. In all of my schooling life, nobody ever mentioned it. And that's just straight logic, isn't it? Take these, I have to have them on to read. Then he goes on, we are committed to ensuring, they're getting a glare obviously from the computer, we're committed to ensuring that our content is always respectful and compassionate, particularly regarding such a terrible event, the spokesperson said. Speaking to reporters in Darwin on Saturday, that's today, Albanese said it was the responsibility of governments, this is our Prime Minister in Australia, said it was the responsibility of governments and all of us, particularly men, to speak out about domestic violence. And they're still calling it this dumbass little euphemism, domestic violence. It's male violence towards women. And he says, on average, there's one woman a week being killed at the hands of someone they know. No, a man that they know. It goes across income groups, goes across ethnicities, faiths, everywhere, he said. He still didn't say a man. He said someone they know. Overwhelmingly, it's men. 6 women have died due to violence in Australia over the past fortnight, 5 allegedly perpetrated by men. Allegedly. One of them, yeah, like I said, unusually was a woman who murdered another woman, and she was on a psychotic rampage up at Muswellbrook. So they include Lily James, the water polo player who was 21 at St Andrew's Cathedral School, murdered in the staff change room toilets because her co-worker, Thyson, her murderer, knew where she'd be and worked at the same school and had studied at the same school. And then also Perth lawyer, she was a family law barrister, 34 years old, Alice Rose McShearer, whose partner has been charged with her murder in a hotel room. That was the Crown Plaza Hotel in Perth. And Bendigo mother Annalene Logie Osias. She, I believe, is the Filipino mother of 4 children, and 2 of them are primary school age, who police allege was fatally assaulted by her ex-partner when her 2 children were in her home. So then I saw Julia Baird on The Drum yesterday with a panel, and she played a short clip that I posted briefly before I took it down. I'm going to play it again, on a guy who I have been fortunate enough until then to not know existed, and is a piece of shit called Andrew Tate. I'm going to send this to Andrew Tate. I'm going to tag all his little mentally and emotionally impotent little retarded, mentally and emotionally retarded, intellectually retarded, incel, misogynist buddies. Because I heard this man who has a cult. I mean, he's on 4 Corners this Monday night. He's being investigated because he has a Jordan Peterson endorsed man club, telling men that they all should be rich, like stinkingly rich, to the point where he walks around smoking cigars, drives sports cars, and talks very deliberately about how women need to kowtow to men, and how no man in history didn't fuck everything that moved. And then he cites, who's the Siberian who populated half of the Siberian peninsula? Genghis Khan. And then he talks about how he would never fuck a woman who's fucked more than 3 men. Now, I'd like, when I'm finished dealing with this disgraceful situation that I'm in, where I haven't seen my 11-year-old daughter and my 14-year-old son at all properly since Christmas Day last year, and we're in November, and this is totally legal, and I have run a federal government regulated childcare service and been a professional nanny up until 2022, forced into that as I was when I left the abusive male father of my youngest child, who's now keeping them from me with no penalty, whereas you can go to jail and definitely get a criminal record, a police record, and definitely be fined, and even maybe just get a community service order put on you, but you will be in the same criminal jurisdiction as rapist murderers in this country if you don't pay your parking fine and drive your car after 16 weeks of non-payment and they cancel your licence. You will be in a criminal court system, but nothing happens to you at all if you steal a child. So when I finish with this, I've created a little YouTube channel. I've decided I'm only 15 years behind the rest of the planet, I understand, but I've decided DDTV Australia is where you'll find me over at YouTube, because again, if you can push this around, these sets of pieces to camera that I'm doing explaining the situation here, if you can push it around, because when I've finished with this hideous family law court set of family law court dissertations, I'm going to start mercilessly lampooning these revolting male incel trolls who say such things, because, I mean, for starters, one of the first things I'll point out to Tate and his mates is that the clitoris is the only organ on any Homo sapien that has no other function other than to give sexual pleasure. a penis pisses. So which part of this moron and his entire, I think he's got 16 million followers on the platform formerly known as Twitter, which got bought for $45 billion by one of the most stupid and vicious men on earth, Elon Musk, who could have given all of that money to contraception rolled out to every woman on earth, and could have halved climate change inside of 2 generations in the process by dropping the population, because women wouldn't have to be slaves to being brood mares. And yet this piece of shit, Andrew Tate, and again, I'm going to start to do comedy after this extremely tragic family law court matter is over, which it doesn't look like being anytime soon, because this fuckwit hasn't seemed to have clocked that if the clitoris is the only organ on any human body that does nothing other than give sexual pleasure, there was probably a reason for that, evolutionarily speaking. And so we can rationally and indeed scientifically, I say, conclude that women's sexual pleasure was so incredibly important to the evolution of our species, our seemingly intelligent species, that we got our own button that does nothing else except that, and the boys didn't. Now, I'm going to reverse Freud. I think they got clit envy. Poor little peckers, they have to ejaculate and pee, whereas we just get to come. So I'm going to start to rub it in the noses of Andrew Tate and his incel mates and his violent cohort who call women whores and suggest that they shouldn't have more than 3 sexual partners lest they be undesirable, yet men are meant to conquer the world biologically and historically by inseminating everything that moves. It's this disgusting misogynist mentality, these people, the so-called people, these men. But how disappointing that a private boys' school headmaster thought that he even needed to make a statement this week about how nice the murderer was, and then that our New South Wales Minister for Women has definitely come straight back out and said, no, you did not need to make that statement. I think that we will be the judge of who a monster is. And I understand, believe me, because, again, I'm in the arms in my christening photo of my godfather, Warren Rogers, who murdered his wife, Anne, when he was 68 years of age and she was 63, and they'd been married for 45 years and never had anyone else by the seams of it. And everybody said he was such a nice guy. But I honestly am not retrospectively fudging when I say that there was this severity, this intensity in the set of his jaw. And I just instinctively didn't like him, and he was my godfather. Whereas my sister's godfather, his brother, was terribly lovely and very gentle and didn't have this strain of severity in him. And I've explained all this in previous posts, how his own son cracked his mother's computer and dobbed him into his father, and then his father murdered the mother, his wife. And the children stood up for him in court and literally ran the line alongside my father on the northern beaches, that he had to be cut some slack because she was fucking another man, whereas, people who were literally speaking that line had been adulterous to their spouses, i.e. my mother, and not the other way around. Mum was literally an angel and very prudish and never had the chance, stuck at home with 3 little girls on Bilgola Plateau. Yeah. So it's worth reading Julia Baird's piece in the Herald today as well. I have an idea which I've tried to put up several times for 7 years and no one's listened to, and it it's modelled on the Rural Fire Service and all of their hundreds of millions of dollars of real-time cameras and equipment that looks all over the planet, all over our part of the planet, the nation, for fires. And fires, on average, kill one person a year in Australia, but men, on average, kill 2 women a week. And I reckon that you could roll out a not dissimilar model. You could get real-time cameras, the perpetrators who have been found by police and or a judge, hopefully immediately, to be literally menacing women, need an immediate ankle bracelet or a necessary tracking device, in the same way that if you've blown over the limit for drink driving, you can get fitted into your car a brake that does not unlock until you blow into a bag and show that you don't have any alcohol content in your breath. And we could put these devices on men who have been shown to be definitely making women fear for their lives, and that an entire dedicated wing of the police force gets created specifically to look and track on GPS tracking where these fuckers are in real time, where these murderous fuckers are in real time, and roll out, if the police can't get to them literally by driving 30 kilometres, like say they're 30 kilometres away from the nearest dedicated domestic violence police unit officer, then you would have a volunteer service where people would go down just like they do at the Rural Fire Service, and I'm not joking. You get trained on how to, I went up and checked it out. You get trained on having to be able to carry certain weights of hoses in certain ways and following protocol to become a volunteer Rural Fire Service fighter. And it's upheld. There are community fundraisers for this. It's widely under. What's your escape plan? What's your escape plan for the fire? What's your escape plan for this murderous man? How many people around you know? Who have you told? Who have you? Let's do with this what we already are doing with fire, because the networks are nationwide. They know no bounds. All the way out in the bush, you have Rural Fire Service volunteers. You have the system rolled out with cameras and monitoring equipment and GPS and satellite gear, and you have a massive control room with hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment and big TV screens and command units and staff that have designated roles, and very well organised. And this was laughed at when I first, and here it is. And here it is. This radical idea. Someone's finally printed it today, even though I first said it to a documentary filmmaker who was a neighbour of mine at the time up in Fegans Bay on the Central Coast in 2017, 1 year after my godfather murdered his wife. And I lost my child in a family law court case at 5 years of age to a man who abused me that months before. And Kay Harrison is her name, the documentary maker. And I said this exact idea. I'm only saying that because, if anyone accused me of being a liar, she could back it up. Because I told her, I said, I don't understand why they're not rolling out. And it says here, Wendy Tuohy, Tuohy, Wendy Tuohy, the journo in the Sydney Morning Herald today, says that men flagged as potential killers would be GPS tracked and monitored online under a radical, is it radical, is it? Proposal family violence experts want governments to consider after 5 women were killed in 9 days. Well, I had this radical proposal 6 years ago. As despair mounts about the failure to curb the numbers of it, and I'm going to say that again because I'm going to tout myself here. Ministers for Women like Katie Gallagher, hello, thank you very much for helping me out with your letter with Rochelle White a couple of weeks ago, as I've said further down in these. And then Jodie Harrison, I've been trying to get through to about these matters for quite some months and haven't had any correspondence back from her office yet. but I intend to before the end of the year. These people do actually need to listen to me. I've had a lot of lived experience in this space now, having been assaulted by 2 out of 3 of the fathers of my children. And don't worry, they all had 3 and 4 children to 3 and 4 different women, and we're all educated and read, and some of us are even achieved. So it's not like we're all, just bonking madly and not looking after our children or anything. It's just the modern age. If we were rich like Liz Taylor, we could get married 5 times. No, not when you're a poor woman like me. You are poor women, and poor people in general, of course, are perceived differently. Particularly if they're promiscuous sluts. Or just poor women who have children, multiple children to multiple men, when the men are doing it too, and always have and always will, and had harems. So I think over at my DDTV new YouTube station, I might go and start to put some of these ideas up. I might dress up like Andrew Tate, only the female version, and I might espouse the centrality of the clitoris in my speeches, and mercilessly lampoon these narcissistic, deranged, dangerous, misogynist morons with their machismo. Man, it's going to be a lot more fun than trying to prosecute this family law court reform need, where we need to criminalise parents who take children off other parents, because, as I said, a man who abused me is literally nearly put me in the grave now on beta blockers for my heart, and being investigated for a pain that won't go away in my hip, with some cancer tests coming up. Because I haven't seen my children since Christmas Day. So, hi, Jeff Thomas. I saw you just come on just then. You could probably guess what I'm talking about again, but it is, in this case, Ian Collier's statement, he was the principal at St Andrew's Cathedral School when this young man who became the 24-year-old murderer of Lily James, but, he's now at Shaw, the prestigious all-boys school, so he's gone from a Christian school to an all-boys school, and he's saying that this young man was delightful and had all the promise, and of course he was just saying he's a really lovely guy. And as I was just saying, again, this is what everyone said about my godfather, Warren Rogers. Such a nice guy. Except not nice enough to think that they are not entitled to murder when their penis and mind and heart doesn't get what it wants. Murder women in order to control them. In many ways, it's complex because it's so across the border with so many different types of men from different stratas of society killing so many different types of women. But in some ways, it's really simple. They are absolutely deranged to the point that the culture and the rage in them, and we do have to start to investigate what testosterone does as a neurotransmitter to their brains, because we are not doing it to men. Have a look. Keep pushing these videos around that I'm at least discussing. I mean, lots of people are discussing it. It's not like I'm at least discussing. I'm saying I'm trying to discuss the specifics of my case and show how it even pans out into a situation where women in the family law court didn't believe me. Dr. Lucia Vardenegger, a psychologist, and then, of course, Federal Magistrate Leanne Turner, who I want both fired from the family law court because they had evidence of 3 separate women over 25 years who'd all been abused by Ian Little, and they had it in totally admissible form, affidavit form and voicemail recording left on an answering machine of a telephone, so they knew that they were being recorded, and that makes it admissible in a court of law. So, yeah, I just thought I would do some of the reads from the Sydney Morning Herald and congratulate Jodie Harrison, Minister for Women, New South Wales, for coming out against this, Dr. Ian Collier, who presided over a Christian school, so they honestly believe, again, that a little man is God with a penis who lives in the sky and controls everything, and had a son called Jesus who he somehow had to slaughter, and or at least allow to be slaughtered. And then, even though it's all in God's plan, but God has boobies, doesn't she? God's definitely got boobies. And here are these fine young women and they were all quite young, except for the middle-aged woman who was the Filipino woman top left of this screen here, which will probably be top right by the time I flip it, who was a mother of 4 and murdered while her 2 primary school-aged children were at home. Don't know if you can see that there, but there they are. Last fortnight's Australian women. You can't believe it. This is the barrister, that's Lily James, that's the mum in South Australia with the 4 children, and don't know who these 3 are, but it's all there in the Herald. Anyway, I think that's enough for me, because I'm going to start soon to, as I said, take my cue from Andrew Tate. I would please beg you to put my GoFundMe link around to everyone you can, because the law bills are huge. I've done the whole affidavit this week, which it's been literally a year and a half in the making, and I've done all the annexes and exhibits and got it lodged and got it JP witnessed and lodged, and it's huge and it's exhausting doing this for yourself, but I do need a technician to present for me in court. Like I said, I've won a cross-examination of a senior Royal Commission expert psychiatrist called Associate Professor Carolyn Quadrio in the past, in 2017, whilst I was bleeding to death for my eldest daughter. But it's now 6 and 7 years later, and I haven't seen my 2 youngest children who got given to the man who abused me since Christmas Day. And this is totally legal in Australia. So please, the other most important thing before I go here, really important, the most important, is go over to Mark Dreyfus's page, our Federal Attorney General, who just lost his wife this week after loving her for years. And so I'm guessing this is going to be the furthest thing from his mind, and then Christmas will come. How sad for him. He seems like a lovely human being. But there is a link at Mark Dreyfus's, our Federal Attorney General's page, where you can make submissions about the Family Law Court Act that they're amending. And the first part that they've already committed to amending is the overturning of John Howard and Pauline Hanson. Just one more time. Pauline Hanson's Presumption of Shared Care, where women like me were obliged to share their children with men who'd have been abusive to them, and that gave the father of my youngest child purchase on her in the first place, to claim in the court that he was already sharing her care and then take her off me. As my mum died, her stepbrother, my godfather, murdered his wife. I nearly bled to death from a prolapsed submucosal cervical fibroid. Had to sell my house for an emergency hysterectomy after a 5-week public wait list for emergency surgery at Royal North Shore would have killed me. It stood and self-defended, all in 2016 this was. Lost my 5-year-old daughter, who's now 11, and not been seen by me since Christmas Day in any meaningful way. And my little son, whose father had died, was already so traumatised. And then, to top it off, I think I explained the other day, my sister on the Northern Beaches, who married into a very wealthy family, then tried to give him away to a foster carer in Mona Vale called Yale Michelle. And that sister was Elise Johnson. She tried to give him away to a foster carer, so DCJ stepped in and gave him to the perpetrator of the violence against me and his 2 other female partners before me over 25 years, who'd all said they had the same experience, and now he's abusing me further by keeping my children from me completely. I just can't believe it. And this is a really hard day, because it's the day I was meant to pick her up, was at 1 o'clock, and I phoned her, and finally I got through to her on FaceTime, which I don't usually do, and her father was sitting right next to her, patrolling and controlling and supervising, as he calls it, everything, but she didn't make one single inquiry about me. She never does, even when I can get through to her. She's been taught. So I mean, he's so revolting and so lacking in respect of me and women in general, that he has not taught her any life skills to ask how another person is when she speaks to them. So I'm just absolutely used to whatever the scant amount of times I've been able to get through to my daughter on the FaceTime. She and her brother now, who told the welfare state for 3 years that he wished to be restored to me, and they ignored him and gave him to this man after my sister Gate tried to give him away. And so both my youngest children, my son and my daughter, are completely alienated, and they have absolutely no respect for me or regard for me, even in as much as so much as even asking, oh, hi, Mum, how are you? Or what are you doing today? And of course, the answer is absolutely nothing except mourning and grieving you and imagining where you are and what you're doing and what we would be doing, because you can't get away from it. It just never leaves you 24/7. So yeah, I think the next time I'm going to come on and I'm going to act like Andrew Tate, female style, and I'm going to start to read him the Riot Act and talk to him about the primacy of the clitoris. As I said, being the only organ on any body of a human being that was designed for nothing other than sexual pleasure, so therefore logically probably had quite a lot to do with the evolution of the species, that we evolved this little magic button that does nothing, like boys' penises take a pee with their willies, don't they, as well as ejaculate and inseminate, whereas ours does nothing else except give us pleasure. So therefore you would think that biology alone respects our sexual pleasures so much that it might have actually been quite critical to the development of the species. Just a thought. I'm going to start to ram that thought down Andrew Tate's throat. In fact, I got so direct with him today. I might post it, I think, just for a bit of fun over at Instagram, a bit of sport. I got so direct with him today on his Twitter feed, his X feed, that I told him I hope he suffocates to death with vaginal juices up his nose and down every orifice. That's for you, Andrew Tate. I've only just started. I'm going to verbally tear you to pieces. You wait. I've just got to get my children back first, and maybe I'll lighten the load up by throwing in some comedy here and there. I think I deserve it. Anyway, read the Herald articles and Julia Baird's article. It's very good. And thank you to our New South Wales Minister for Women for coming out against this completely unnecessary statement by Dr. Ian Collier, who was a Christian, headmaster of a Christian school and now an elite boys' school, saying that the guy who murdered Lily wasn't a monster. So what is then? It's unreal. Anyway, thanks.